Ladies and gentlemen, you're about to experience the Gut Check Project, talking science, health, and innovation that you can actually use. But this isn't just another health show. We're here to have fun and make your time enjoyable. Well, while you are enjoying yourself, know that even though the GCP covers some health topics with healthcare pros, we are not your doctors. So use our show to entertain your mind and not for medical advice. And now, here are your hosts of the Gut Check Project, Dr. Ken Brown and Eric Rieger.
Hello, Gut Check Project fans and KBMD Health family. I am your host of the Gut Check Project, Eric Rieger, joined by this awesome guy, Dr. Kenneth Brown. What's up, Ken?
What is going on? We have episode 91. Today, we are going to kind of just flow around a little bit, talk a few things. We're going to talk the science behind podcasts. We're going to talk the science behind, well, the one-chip challenge, because somebody here has some personal experience with it.
I do have some personal experience with that. But before we get to personal experience, Ken, what's going on in your life?
So I had kind of an interesting week. There was another one of the baby bathwater meetings that we have. This is that entrepreneurial group that we've talked about before. It's super cool, brilliant minds.
Very much.
And I was supposed to assist with Chris Kresser and Jason Klopp about the longevity that you can have if you take care of your microbiome. Unfortunately, a few days before, I ended up coming down with fevers, and it appears that I had the flu.
Oh, I thought you had pulmonary rickets.
It was one of those things.
Or hepatic gingivitis.
I was torn between scurvy and the flu. And I ate like 12 limes, and I still felt like shit. So I'm going to go with the flu.
Realized you weren't on a boat?
Lloyda kept asking why I was dressed in a white sailor mock, and I'm just like, I don't know. It just feels like it'd be appropriate. So anyways, it wasn't scurvy.
Give me your citrus.
Turns out it was the flu. So that put you in a weird position because Eric had to step up and help me with the lecture. So how'd that go?
Actually, it went great, honestly, because of the compliment of having Jason Klopp and Chris Kresser, both great, brilliant minds, good friends of ours. Jason, of course, is a fecal microbial transplant expert, and he actually has a very niche application, brain health, through FMT and then other applications like that. He's originally Canadian, but I believe that his practice is in Mexico, I think. Is it correct? Is that right?
I think that's where he does some work with autism also, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I meant by the brain. But yes, the autism treatment that he does with FMT, but he's just got immense data, which, of course, if he has that amount of niche expertise, that means that he's studied all of the other applications that go along with FMT so he could recognize what works well for him. And, of course, Kresser goes without saying. If you've ever perused anything or searched anything over gut health and who is out there the most with scientifically, clinically backed data and claims, it's Chris Kresser. That's exactly how I discovered him, and Ken met him years before we were even in this group.
Yeah, one of the people that first understood the science behind Atrantil and had me on his podcast, and I commend him on that, and really does his homework, and one of the most smartest people I've ever met. I mean, even Joe Rogan's had him on multiple times and says, this is one of the smartest guys I've ever met. So you got a chance to share the stage with him, and that's awesome, and I heard you did an amazing job. Thank you so much for stepping up and doing that while I recovered from scurvy.
It was really just the notes and most of the stuff that we've talked about on this show, which actually, and not to make light of it, but it's really kind of cool doing the show because we're forced into constantly having to learn, relearn, re-explore. And I think that it honestly just pays dividends. It keeps everything new, and we find new things to talk about. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thanks for the notes.
Yeah, absolutely. While you were there, in typical fashion, how I like to overdo things in all aspects of life, I was intent on I'm recovering from my scurvy/flu. And so I had the week off. He's over there giving the talk, and I was adamant about doing my sauna. I was adamant about doing breath work, and fortunately, I have a steam room built into my shower, and so I was doing breath work one morning, and really was hitting some long Wim Hof specifically breath work, where it's a Tumu style breathing, where you breathe in and breathe out, and then on an exhale you just stop and hold your breath. I was in somewhat of like a yogi squat doing this, and I was and then holding my breath, and I was like, wow. And then I just kind of didn't feel like I felt short of breath at all or anything. And I felt like I almost achieved like what you're supposed to do in Wim Hof, is just be free. And then I woke up on the floor of my steam room with blood and stood up, and I had knocked half my front tooth off. And so that was super neat, waking up and being disoriented, and I'm trying to do something for my health. So fortunately, I have two amazing dentists, husband-wife team at Lone Star Dental. So shout out to Dr. Civi and Dr. Montgomery. Dr. Montgomery, I called the office. They're like, oh my, they. It's not like I go in a whole lot, but I was like, hey, just knock my tooth out. They figured it was something really bad. And I'm like, no, it's nothing cool.
Yeah.
So when I showed up, and it was pretty funny because I was still sweaty from the steam room, and Dr. Montgomery brought me in and was just, did a temporary bond. I'm going to have a little more work done. It is cool that, that I have the ability to call somebody like that, and they get me in right away. It's awesome. And he was really funny because he was just like, okay, we'll see you when it's time to do that crown. Quit trying to be so healthy.
Well, really, honestly, the tip really isn't that bad unless you're really looking for
here.
it.
There it is. Yeah. No, you got to look.
You
You
gotta
really
look
look
hard.
at it. He's a really good dentist. These guys are amazing dentists. Lone Star Dental. They're in Plano. If you're in the area, hit them up. They're amazing people. The staff is incredible. Staff's been there for absolutely ever, and that's what I really admire. Like, as a doctor that has staff, like, I love the fact that I can say she's been with me for 10 years. She's been with me for 10 years, and so on. That's changing now because they're growing up and moving on to bigger and better things, but that is what it is. So
happens whenever you have good people and they move on to bigger and better things. And you've always been a good promoter of that. So
yeah, so that was my interesting thing. Embarrassing, very embarrassing. But then again, part of me is just like, wow, you held your breath till you passed out. I mean, right now, if Wim Hof listening, he'd be like, yes, you have done it. Now go do the cold bath. No, screw you, Wim Hof. I'm not doing the cold bath.
Well, I think that pretty much covers personal stuff. Should we get into our topic?
Yeah, I want to get into one thing right here.
Uh-oh.
You've got a little box here.
I do.
All right, so what I'm holding, show it to the camera.
So that's the Pocky
One Chip Challenge, which I did not know anything about until Eric showed up with this box shaped like a coffin. So I'm going to hand it over to you, and please explain why you have that.
So I have this because at one of the surgery centers that I cover for, we had one technician and one nurse they're moving on. One of them is going to have a baby and she's going to stay home. And the other one just got a job that fit her better. But they were both incredible workers. And they said to me and to Michelle, who also works there, would you mind doing a one-chip challenge to send us off? And I don't know why. I just said, I'll do it. And so, because it seemed like fun.
Did you know what a one-chip challenge was?
I was aware that it was supposed to be really hot. And I actually enjoy spicy food. You and I have eaten out many, many times. I thoroughly enjoy spicy food. I make salsa. I mean, I enjoy peppers. This is hot. This is really hot. Now, Michelle hates being outdone, and she couldn't wait to say, oh, I'll do it too. And I think that she hates the fact that she said that. Because, so I don't know if y'all have ever seen this thing. The chip is not in here. However, we were at the surgery center, and I did wear gloves to handle this thing. And before we get into what all causes it, and I actually have found a little bit of research. You're going to be a little surprised about this to kind of explain what's going on here. But this little box, if you make it 10 minutes, you can hold up a sign that says, I crushed the Pocky Challenge.
If you make 10 minutes with like not eating or drinking or something?
Without eating or drinking anything. You're supposed to say, I crushed the tortilla chip challenge or something else like that. And then you have these different ratings. If you've made it 1 minute, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, or 1 hour. I can tell you that my experience wasn't terrible. It was very, very, very hot. I was able to tolerate it, and I made it to about 12 minutes and then decided to start drinking water and different things like that. When I left the center, which was about 45 minutes after I ate the chip, something I haven't ever experienced before was I'm going down Central. I'm leaving Anna, if you have any idea where that is, but I'm driving south, and not that far from there is McKinney. There's a Whole Foods there at Stacy Road in McKinney or Allen, whatever it is. And I'm about 3 miles from there, and suddenly my stomach's like, and I'm driving my truck, and I'm like, oh gosh, what's happening? This whole time I'm thinking, man, I mastered this. There was nothing to it. That's not true.
Phase 1.
Phase 1.
Oral. Phase 2.
Yeah. Gut punch. I mean, it was like somebody was sitting over in the passenger seat, basically and throwing their shin straight into my stomach like this.
A Muay Thai fighter.
Yeah. It's just calm growl right there in my truck, just beating the shit out of me. And so I'm driving, and I'm like, so I tried to stay somewhat scientific, and I think it paid off, but I was like, I've got to find something with some fat, something to basically douse this capsaicin, which of course is the active ingredient that makes things spicy, and we'll get to that in a moment. But that's what's causing all this pain. And I go into Whole Foods, and I know if you can't see me if you're not watching.
Yeah, if you're usually somebody that just listens to this, at some point you got to look at some of this stuff because this is getting just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, basically about 50 times the number of people y'all listen than y'all watch this show. But anyway, so I'm walking like this into Whole Foods, and I don't know how many people coming up to me saying, "Sir, are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm freaking fine." And I'm trying to read protein things like this, staring up at the counter, putting my hand up here like this, and I finally find one. And I didn't wait to check out. I just drank it there in the store and went up to the store to go and.
But what did you get?
I got there was a protein drink. I think it was a Koya protein drink that also had a little bit of fat in there. And what's really cool, I was in pain. I don't really get like that. I drank it, drank another one, and about 20 seconds later, all the pain was gone. I mean, all of it, and paid for them and left, and that was really the end of it. I actually didn't have any other GI disturbances or
that's interesting.
Diarrhea. I know that a lot of people feel or have had experiences where they have really hot food and then later they have diarrhea, or some people even have the joke of that's so hot it'll burn you twice. You know, it'll sting your anus on the expel. I kind of wonder though, if fat content didn't basically encapsulate and neutralize the capsaicin by the time it would have reached there.
Well, I'll tell you my theory on this. They put the pepper on a chip.
They did.
They did not bury the pepper in an undigestible rind of a fiber that makes its way through. So you had the full bolus of the capsaicin in your stomach right there.
Yeah, it's actually a really good point.
And you were able to neutralize it. Yeah.
All the surface area of all the capsaicin was exposed.
All the surface areas was exposed, yeah.
That's a really good point.
And had you not done that, could have got way, way worse.
Yeah, I'm glad it didn't. I mean, I wasn't in it for the pain duration. I can tell you that for sure.
I love the science behind capsaicin. We should do something on that sometime.
We definitely should. Let me just kind of, we're going to go through a couple of different things on capsaicin. I know that you know what the Scoville Heat Unit scale is.
Yes.
So kind of describe what you know, and then I'll kind of give some references and numbers here.
Golly, I don't know. I just know that it is, I'm going to get this so wrong, but it's some sort of scale that a guy named Scoville did that he kept diluting things and then people would just score it. And so they just said, oh, well, the Scoville scale is this. It's a dilution ratio, right?
That's correct. And I believe that at the top of the scale of natural heat, now this is natural heat, is the Carolina Reaper. And I'm just looking at this chart that I have on my phone. But the Carolina Reaper is rated approximately at 1.5 million Scoville units. Okay? So what does that even mean? So let's go down to some things. Hardly anyone's going to bite into a Carolina Reaper on a daily for any reason. So let's talk about some things that are more applicable and give us some application here. A jalapeno pepper typically falls between 2,500 and 10,000. And I know that everyone knows, just depending upon the ripeness and how mature a jalapeno is, can determine how hot it's going to be. So that's kind of the range of a jalapeno. If that helps you with the reference there. A Serrano is going to be 10,000 to 25,000. Everyone knows those are hotter. So Tabasco pepper, cayenne pepper, without the dilution.
So that's the interesting thing. So when you say Tabasco and cayenne, I'm like, I use those in sauces, but they take them out of the pepper. There's a key component here.
Yes, that's correct.
You leave it in the pepper, it's a big difference.
That's exactly right. So its presentation is going to make a difference on how hot it's going to finish on something like this and its exposure. Then you can get up into habanero. An habanero chili, without being diluted, could be anywhere in a range of 100,000 to 350,000. And then you've got the red Savina habanero, which is considerably hotter, 350,000 to 750,000. And what I like on the scale, though, think of the range with jalapeno only being 2,500 to 10,000. Suddenly, we're getting up to one specific pepper given a range of 300,000 different units on the Scoville scale. Just how varied one pepper can be in just its intensity. You really don't know what you're getting into. You're basically, one could be twice as hot as the other.
It's so true. So like, you're like, oh, I had a habanero pepper once and it wasn't that big of a deal. And then one day you have it and it just knocks you to your knees, and we can talk about how it does that. But.
Sure. And then the next echelon is going to include things like ghost peppers and Naga Viper. I think I'm saying this correctly. Naga Viper peppers, and those are 750,000 to 1.5 million. I've never had those straight at all, but the Pocky chip is rated just above 1 million. 1 million Scoville units is this, so it's pretty hot.
That's really hot.
Yeah,
that's a clean 1 million, a consistently clean 1 million.
Yeah,
the Pocky chip should be the thing that you base that on, because it's going to be consistent.
That's correct. It's dusted the same proportionately, etc. So 1 million Scoville units approximately for one chip, and I would say the intensity is all of. I mean, it's very intense for a good 7 minutes. I mean, it's the first minute you can tell it's heating up, and then you kind of get to this threshold, and then suddenly it's like it hurts to breathe, hurts to, to push, you try to be really careful and not let the chip hit your lips on the way in. Of course, you're using gloves, so as soon as you take those off, just being super, super, super careful. Now, Michelle, I do think that people who saw it happen, I was able to stay. And if y'all have listened to Ken talk on this podcast quite a bit, he's read things like the Daily Stoic, and that stuff rubs off on me just the same. So I practice those same techniques, and that actually helps you get through stressful situations. So I kept reminding myself what the situation was, what the obstacle was, and like Birdman did, check next.
Check next, yeah, love that.
Yeah, so do the task at hand, and then what's next, and so that's really kind of how I tackled it. Michelle, if you're watching, Michelle, and I think you are, you're not stoic, and you and you didn't check, and you didn't like what was next. She was making her way all the way around the surgery center, begging for water, begging for bread. She had bread coming out the side of her mouth.
Michelle, if you're watching, I think you are. You're not stoic, and you are not checking next.
And just so you know, Michelle, Ken wanted me to call you and have you on. I was like, I don't think it's going to go over so good. So anyhow, all of this, though, to do the Pocky chip or the Pocky challenge, if you're up for it, great. If you're not, I don't recommend that you do it.
I was just thinking, like, for some sort of, let's just start a TikTok challenge. It's the Pocky chip challenge, then put in your contacts. No glove, Pocky chip contact, because I wear contacts, and I have made the mistake the day before of cutting some jalapenos up.
Yeah. And
washing my hands, not thinking much of it, waking up the next morning, or taking my contacts out,
yeah,
not washing them good enough, and then putting them in the next morning. And I equate it, I've not had it happen to me, but I think it's probably similar to being maced or, pepper sprayed right in your eyes.
I mean, I think.
I just sit there and just go,
yeah. It's like bear spray. That's what it is, man.
So that's it. The Pocky challenge. No gloves, put in some contacts.
Yeah, I don't think that. Here's the bad part about Gut Check Project. We don't edit anything. I don't think we're supposed to say that.
Oh, yeah, don't do that. I can't even do it with the Scoville unit of what, like 7,000 or whatever you said. So my eyes couldn't take it when it was perfectly avoiding the rind, keeping most of the. So the jalapeno, a lot of where that capsaicin isn't on the outside. It's actually on the inside. People think it's on the seeds.
It's the meat.
It's the meat. It's the part that holds the seeds there. Yeah. That's the part that holds all the capsaicin.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So to go along with all this,
yeah,
I actually found an article that's really brief, but it's pretty good. And I just was kind of curious where you sit as a physician in comparison with what this article says to kind of describe what's going on with capsaicin and what maybe you might see with somebody who experiences eating spicy food. So
or
this was
guy eating spicy food.
Yeah, and this was published back in October of this year, so not very long ago. Very well. So it starts off with whether you're eating Mexican, Indian, or Cajun meals, or just enjoying some zesty buffalo wings during the big game. It talks about how spicy food is in things that we eat, and we enjoy them. But sometimes spicy foods can cause diarrhea. And it talks about in the digestive tract, possibly capsaicin could trigger diarrhea. But I think a lot of that goes back to if it's not highly exposed, probably like the chip was, and it happens to be held and then continued to be digested throughout the GI tract, then that's going to expose the rest of the GI tract to capsaicin, allowing more inflammation to happen, and then probably having diarrhea. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's correct, because capsaicin, the molecule capsaicin itself, we have a receptor that actually binds to it, and this receptor perceives it as heat, and it's all the way from the mouth through the anus. So yes, we have these receptors. Interestingly, it's also used to decrease pain on the extremity, because those receptors can actually be used for like pain patches and stuff, because it can downregulate there, but in the GI tract, the GI tract perceives it as heat.
Yeah, it's almost like a yin-yang effect from the GI tract through the rest of the body. So I believe it's called a vilanoid receptor, receptor 1.
Yeah, the vilanoid receptor.
TRPV, so you agree with all that?
TRPV1, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. So basically the brain is trying to understand what's going on. We have stress. And of course you have stress like that. You can have feelings of nausea and confusion. And sometimes people wonder, is spicy food still safe? What do you think, Ken? Spicy food still safe, even though it may make you a little uncomfortable? Is there really that much to worry about? Should they seek help?
Well, it's been a little bit since looked at this, but spicy food technically is still safe. Like the body perceives the heat, sends a signal to the brain, and the brain says, I'm on fire, stop this. But the reality is that those receptors are firing, but generally speaking, it's not like a super acidic or super basic chemical that's actually causing damage. It's more an irritant.
Yeah, I would say so. And they even say that it could be that irritant, but at the same time, also the yin and yang, it actually could be beneficial for your health. Is that true?
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why they talk about why some people, like these food challenges that people do, like a Pocky chip challenge, part of it actually does stimulate a little bit of opioid receptors, where people have like a euphoric feeling while it's going on.
I mean, it's weird because when you're young and you're just acclimating to eating spicy food, at first you're like, why in the world would anybody eat this? And next thing you know, you love spicy food. I mean, that's how it's been for me. I can't get enough of it. I love spicy food. I eat it often, many times a week. But I agree with you. And then they even said in this article, made reference that there have been some studies that have shown that you can actually have a reduction in LDL from prolonged exposure to capsaicin, which I thought was pretty fascinating.
Awesome.
So I am going to ask you, though, if you can just guess, who may have written most of this article before Very Well took it and then publish it, because I guarantee you know this person, and they happen to be a gastroenterologist here in North Texas.
Somebody in my group wrote that a month ago?
Interestingly enough, they are definitely, this person is in your group. Mm-hmm. Another person in your group reviewed it, and so that Very Well could publish it, which means that they probably saw it last after this person. This person may not even be aware. They probably submitted it long time ago, and it's been sitting there waiting to be reviewed, and it probably just got published here recently.
I'm trying to think of people that, Lisa Alvarez, did she do it?
Seems like something she would do, but not her name.
She likes to write stuff.
She does like to write stuff.
Research.
Lisa, we love it when you write stuff. But no, she didn't do this one.
Head of research, Harry Sarles? I don't know. Not
Harry Sarles, but definitely a guy. This guy is Kenneth Brown.
What? No.
Reviewed by J.U. Perry.
No. Yeah. You published last month? I didn't write anything last month.
I think that this is the article that you put together about, if I remember correctly, about 4 years ago. And I think that they just got around to having it medically approved.
Oh, shit.
And so anyway.
I wrote that article.
Yeah, I love the fact that you still agree with everything that you wrote.
All right, Jay, you apparently edited this article. Thank you so much, Dr. Jay Yapuri. So, all right, well then, good. I'm agreeing with everything. So the bottom line is this: when you eat spicy food, one of the reasons, a funny example, I got a friend who was telling me a story about his buddy that got goaded into having a pepper eating challenge when he was on vacation with his buddies. And on the flight home the next day, you know, when you're supposed to bing, seatbelts on, stay down, the peppers kicked in. And what I mean by the peppers kicked in, when we were just talking about how the peppers are delivered, if this capsaicin is highly concentrated in what we would call basically a polyphenol vessel.
Right.
So it's going through as a fiber undigested. When it hits the colon perceives it as heat. And so the colon, if you have a lot of TRPV1 receptors, TRPV1 receptors, which go down the line of the vilanoid aspect, which the vilanoid, when you stimulate, can actually decrease pain and do different things in your endocannabinoid system. That's a whole separate science. But bottom line is this. If you're eating a bunch of peppers and they make it to your colon goes, oh shit, this is hot.
Yep.
So it doesn't want to touch it, so it tries to move it, meaning it contracts, and it puts a lot of water in there, meaning suddenly you've got explosive diarrhea.
It's wild, right?
It's wild.
So, hey, just a side note though, seeds, eating the meat out of these plants, or because that's what they are. But if I remember correctly, I don't think that birds have a sensitivity to capsaicin. So they can eat seeds and basically crap them everywhere to spread certain types of seeds, like, you know, of hot peppers. But apparently mammals are sensitive to capsaicin because we don't do an efficient job of spreading the seeds for those types of plants.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Isn't that
makes
interesting?
sense. So like something that can fly very far distance.
Yeah.
If mammals do it, you'll have the same population in the same area.
Yeah, and it's almost like, I mean,
so
I don't know
cool.
if I read that it doesn't spread them out far enough, or maybe even that mammals just kind of denature through their type of digestion that birds don't. So birds are not steered away from just eating them without any kind of penalty. So they just eat peppers or whatever they happen to eat, crap them out. They spread it, and the peppers don't necessarily want humans to always eat them because we don't do a good job of helping them spread and populate.
Dude, there's got to be a loophole in this. Like you should sign up for a pepper eating contest and bring your pet pelican. And just crush that shit.
Yeah.
Just be like, Eric Rieger, third-time champ with his pelican Bernie.
Yeah, once again, Ken making reference to my menagerie.
You have a lot of animals.
I have a lot of animals.
This is hilarious. I thought we were just going to talk Pocky, and you pull a weird article out your ass, and it happens to be written by me.
I appreciate all of your contributions to today's show.
Well, now the thing that I wanted to talk about today is just going to pale in comparison, or maybe it won't. So that's impressive. So just to recap, Eric did the Pocky one-chip challenge and pretty much crushed it on multiple levels, and also showed that if you can wait 12 minutes and then have some protein and fat.
Yeah, it's over.
It's over. Nice job.
Thanks.
That's funny. Thanks for the letting me know on that stuff, man. On our own show.
What you got?
What I wanted to talk about was an article was just published in PLOS ONE. In the article, the study title is Why People Listen, Motivations and Outcomes of Podcast Listening. Oh. This is interesting because what they are discussing is that podcast listening may help people fulfill their social needs, according to this recent study that was just published in PLOS ONE. The study found that people who listened to more podcasts per month reported a greater presence of meaning in life, and those who formed parasocial relationships. Parasocial meaning kind of a one-way relationship, developing a relationship with the podcast host, and they reported a greater sense of relatedness. Kind of fascinating. And so these people listen to a wide recording of different things, topics like news, education, comedy, health, and currently why peppers will make your butthole burn.
Currently, okay.
Yeah. So I need to do an editorial comment. You did not comment on butthole burning with pepper eating. So basically what these researchers did is they want to study the outcomes of podcast listening, suggesting that the practice might help fulfill basic psychological needs for autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And so what they did is they did an online questionnaire to 308 adults, and they sent that to various countries, the UK, United States, and Portugal. And the respondents completed various personality measures like the need to belong, the need for cognition, the extent that people enjoy thinking, and then the big 5 personality traits. Really interesting. According to the results, 78 of these participants had actually listened to a podcast before, and many of them described listening to them within the last 3 years, and usually about 3.5 hours per week. So if you're over there going, well, everybody and my uncle has a podcast, it's because it looks like a vast majority of people are seeking podcasts for different reasons.
Definitely.
So there's, it's like the whole concept of why is there a Starbucks in every corner? It's because people like coffee. So there's a lot of podcasts because there's a lot of material that people want to listen to. This article was kind of explaining, well, why is that? And what type of person does that? That's what this is about.
Interesting. But I can say that how do you put this? So listening to a radio show, if there happens to be a personality before podcasts, actually what's interesting, we talked about Chris Kresser earlier. It's really Chris Kresser that brought me into the idea of even listening to podcasts, because when he asked if you would be on his show, I can remember sitting there thinking, well, yeah, I guess he can. And then I told you, I was like, hey, this guy, Chris Kresser, who I have gotten all this research from, would like for you to be on his show, his podcast. And you and I were both like, what the hell do we do for that? Because we didn't listen.
I think our question was, what's a podcast?
Yeah, we never really listened to it. I'd heard of things like Serial. I didn't know about anything else at the time. And
Serial?
It was like a murder. I never even listened to it. I just heard it was a show that was about murder. That's all I know.
Okay. I literally thought, I've heard about Serial, and I'm like, what does Captain Crunch have to do with this?
Not breakfast cereal. Okay. I think it was more like Serial Killer. I know nothing about that show even. I just heard people reference it, but that's all I even knew about podcasts. And before that, there was a radio show that I listened to with some frequency. And even though I don't know them, you kind of associate with their personality traits. You're kind of used to what they're going to deliver in a show. And not that they are your friend, but they're kind of a pseudo-conscious friend, because you kind of relate to what the information is that they're giving you, and they're somewhat predictable. I kind of think, though, that podcasts, being long form, not normal in the way that they have advertisement, makes it far more endearing, because there's not the break on the 15s or whatever it happens to be in a traditional radio format. What do you think?
No, for sure. And it's funny because I'm looking at this study, and what you're basically describing the type of person that would enjoy podcasts. When examining each predictor separately, participants with higher openness to experience, internet-based curiosity, and need for cognition were more likely to have listened to a podcast. These authors stated that people who listen to podcasts have higher informational needs, and that podcast listening likely allows them to explore new topics and engage in effortful thinking.
Okay, so stop there, because you and I have a really big habit of sharing. You and I and Mike, and now let's just go ahead and throw Drew in there, have a big habit of sharing podcasts from our own favorite hosts, but episodes that we think that the other person in our group will like.
Yeah.
I mean, almost weekly, one of us is sharing something that we've heard and reintroducing. Because of you, Mike and I listen to Huberman.
Yeah.
But that all started with you throwing out the bait of, you've got to check this out, you've got to check this out. And then I think it was, I probably listened to Rogan the most. And I happened to send that to you and to Mike and to Drew. And then Mike has got some different type of thought thinking just on science and life, things that he finds of skills. And Drew, of course, finds things on social movements and different things like that. I find that that's interesting, because even we know if something is going to be captivating or new information, somebody else is going to be kind of sucked into it. I don't know, but it certainly makes things endearing. And there are times that I'm driving and I may even listen to a show host or a podcast that I normally like, but I don't like the content because I just don't care about the subject matter. And then I say, well, who else would have something that would excite me a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
And then you just kind of start fishing, and then you find a new one. And because it might have a topic or a guest or whatever that I really want to know about it, especially if it happens to be dynamic, science-based, or just a practical application that I could talk to with my sons. I mean, that kind of stuff makes me interested.
Well, it's the other side of the road for us over here. I'll find articles, be like, dude, we got to talk about this. This is so cool. Look at this study. Just like this. I was like, oh my gosh, look at this. I want to talk about this today. Within this model, let's talk about personality traits that like this.
Okay.
So the big 5 personality traits: openness to experience, positively predicted podcast listening, while neuroticism negatively predicted podcast listening. So basically, if you're a neurotic person, you're not going to like podcasts. And if you don't like our podcast, you're probably neurotic. Ours in particular. Just look yourself in the mirror and be like, hate the Gut Check Project, probably neurotic. Separate thing.
You've been diagnosed.
You've been diagnosed. All right. So what the researchers said is that they examined informational and social aspects of podcast listening. What they found is that people who were more open to experience, more curious, and who enjoyed thinking more were more likely to have listened to a podcast.
Yeah.
So people with a higher need to belong were less likely to have listened to a podcast. This was very surprising to the researchers. Because when you're thinking about that and you just said it, oh, if I heard a podcast, I want to tell this person and this person. But the actual act of filling out a questionnaire where you need to belong, those aren't podcast listeners.
No.
Those are people that are just striving to find some extra information and they're willing to share it. So I thought that was really interesting. Listening to more podcasts per month and higher social engagement with podcasts was tied to greater presence of meaning in life. I'm going to say that one more time. Instead of more podcasts, listening to the Gut Check Project per month and higher social engagement with the Gut Check Project was tied to greater presence of meaning in life.
Yeah.
It's a heavy weight to bear for you, Eric.
I don't think that you're tossing it just to me there, Ken.
Well, it's if the presence of and meaning of life is dependent on this podcast.
I'm sorry.
Additionally, forming what is called a parasocial relationship, a one-sided connection between an audience member and a media character with the podcast, was associated with higher relatedness. Relatedness is the basic psychological need for social connection and belongingness. This is fascinating because it fulfills a social need as you engage one-sidedly with the podcast. And if you engage socially with it, hint, hint, email us, discuss with us, that will fulfill one of your higher relatedness needs of basic existence.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes sense, but I also think it's almost like an accepted one way, or definitely a more dominated one-way stream. I mean, I'm obviously a consumer of podcasts just as you are, and for everybody else who listens here, but when you and I are fortunate enough to get to do this part, I don't think of us as dominating the conversation. It's just the format.
Yeah. So parasocial relationships are associated with greater relatedness, and this greater relatedness is associated with greater presence of meaning. Mm-hmm. It offers people a sense of belonging. So right now, somebody is looking at their friend and they're like, I just can't find meaning in life. And they're like, you need to listen to the Gut Check Project. And then they go and they hear about you doing the Pocky One Chip Challenge. And they come back and be like, you sure about that?
Yeah, pretty much that. But
sure about that?
But as we cover different subjects, it'd be kind of interesting. I wonder if we have the same people who listen to us talk about Pocky chips, or are the same ones that listened when we had Travis on and we talked about ass oil.
We did talk about ass oil, and we've talked about Birdman doing incredible things as a Navy SEAL, and we talked about this. I think that I'm very fortunate. I'm very fortunate to have anybody who's listening to this, and thank you for listening, because we get to meet really cool people.
Definitely.
We get to tackle interesting subjects. And it does fulfill a social need for me. The parasocial relationship for me is to you, the listener, and hopefully the listener to me. And so it is fulfilling a basic need for me to share and to have this parasocial relationship. And there is some meaning to it.
You've said this on the show before, but you say it all of the time when we're not talking. Your favorite thing, and mine also, but I'm using you as the example, is this show forces us to stay in check, that we're always looking for and discovering new stuff. Really, what this show has always been is that new stuff could be a person that we just want to talk to, research, and experience. And the cool thing is the show is we're just talking it out. I mean, we're just literally talking it out. And it's kind of cool, at least from our perspective, to talk out things like this, just because not everybody necessarily gets to do what we do, but for the same reason is why I like listening to the shows that I listen to, because I'm not them. I don't get to see who they see. I don't get to hear how they think. Or no, I'm sorry. I don't get to experience how they think, but I get to hear it. And seeing someone's perspective and understanding their personality over time, it's weird, but it kind of helps inform your own mind and gives you a grasp on just different concepts, different approaches. And yeah, I think that there's a lot of learning that goes on from just kind of varying your podcast experience. So
yeah, absolutely. And like for us, like when I discovered Huberman, what I admire about that is his professionalism. And I understand that it's he's got a team and all this other stuff, but I still admire the fact the guy shows up and does a very calculated, essentially long form lecture with data and back. Like I admire the work going into that. I just admire that.
Yeah. But I mean, who are we kidding? My range on podcasts is vast. We've said science as if that's the only ones we listen to. I listen to Dan Cummins' podcast too, and that is not scientific, but it's really funny. It's a comedic history presentation. And then there's...
Wait, that's not hardcore history, is it?
Hardcore history?
Yeah, if you listen, that's a Cummings guy also. Look up hardcore history.
Yeah, I haven't.
That's intense.
Oh no! Dan is the one that I sent to you, who retold the story of Genghis Khan, in his perspective and the way that Genghis Khan took over China, and anyhow, it's brutal.
Oh, Dan Cummins, the comedian.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm thinking of the other guy that does hardcore history, which is he'll do such an in-depth. Lucas and I were on like a road trip, and we were like 3 hours into a 20-hour. You talk about intense. It's so cool. Like I admire that. Like that is so intense. Hardcore history. Forgot his name.
Dan's is called Time Suck. That's what it is.
Oh, I love that. Time Suck. That's right. You sent that to me and I thought it was funny. And I'm going to look up hardcore history really quick.
And another set of podcasts which are very similar to each other but are completely different.
Dan Carlin.
Oh, okay. No, I know who that is. He's actually very entertaining and super in depth. Then there's Concrete, which is spelled with a K, which is very good. And then there's Trendifier, and I remember both of their first names. Danny Jones runs Concrete, and he used to be just his self-funded documentarian. Is that what you call him?
Documentarian?
Sure. Makes documentaries? Is that what you call that?
The
movie guy makes documentaries. But he has interesting guests on. And then Julian, I don't remember his last name. I think it's Julian Dory, runs a podcast called Trendifier. And both of those guys are somewhat similar but have different approaches. And it has nothing to do with science, but their guests are phenomenal. Like they're just cool. And I think it's just fun to listen to things like that. And it does make you think. And I drive a lot too. So that's probably another thing on why I like podcasts so much. Yeah,
it's like this makes sense why podcasts are so popular.
Yeah,
it's a sense of belonging. It fulfills certain
and of course,
need for learning.
Theo Vaughn, if you like to laugh, my sons and I often, he has a show weekly, and that's a bonding experience for Gage and Mac and I. We always talk about Theo Vaughn together. That's good stuff.
That's funny. I'm not that big of a fan of Theo, the few episodes I've heard, but what Lucas and I will bond over on a road trip is he will eventually, I'll try and do some like sciencey stuff and he'll be like, hey, yeah, is it my turn now? I'm like, yeah. And it will be 2 bears, 1 cave.
Which is also very good. That's Bert Kreischer and
Tom Segura.
Tom Segura, yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah. So I don't know. Well, that is funny. I thought we were going to just do a quick little podcast on podcasts.
Yeah, we kind of did.
And you kind of threw a little curveball on an article that I wrote that I didn't know I wrote.
Thank you again.
But we want to talk once again. Remember, this is a podcast for you. We are trying to engage. We are trying to make sure that you get what you want. So please interact with us. This is part of the parasocial bonding that the psychologists just proved. So make sure you hit us up. How do they get hold of us?
You can go to kbmdhealth.com or gutcheckproject.com. Both of them have availability for you to sign up for KBMD Health. Both news, information. We send out generally a weekly email. You can also find our store there to save money if that's your thing, on different products such as Atrantil Pro, CBD, and other things that this guy here endorses because he is a physician. But more importantly, you're already listening to the show. You're already part of the Gut Check Project. Just shoot us your questions, your ideas, your suggestions. We average probably around 30 responses a week. So for those of you who tend to do that on the regular, thank you. If you want to do it and you want us to read back and write back to you, that's all you got to do. And we've kind of got a nice little system of doing it. So.
Yeah, and the usual thing that kind of helps with this to engage, go to iTunes. If you rate it, if you like us, that'd be really cool. If you go to Spotify, do that also. We're learning that actually helps engage other people to start looking at it. So that's what we're trying to do.
You brought up something earlier too, and we never really addressed this. So for those of y'all who listen, thank you. Y'all outnumber those who watch us on YouTube by about 40 to 50 fold. So if you ever wanted to see or check out anything visually, then you just have to go to YouTube, search in Gut Check Project, just like you're doing on YouTube and Spotify. And there you can see the video and share it with somebody.
I am just going to say that if you are interested in seeing a visual show, my suggestion is episode 90, where we had Rachel Shear on.
Fitness model,
nutritionist, super smart, super cool, and freaking hilarious.
Yeah.
So if you want to start watching the visual episodes, that's a pretty good one to start. And then I would definitely find the Birdman, because that was intense and funny at the same time.
Yeah, Ryan Patton Birdman is good stuff. So
Parrot.
Damn it. I did it.
His name is Ryan Birdman Parrot. That's an ongoing joke because it was done the first time, and then I did it a few episodes ago.
You just did. You couldn't.
Oh, Ryan.
I knew.
Okay. Oh, you know what? We might as well bring it up right now, because now we have to give. I mean, we have to say I'm sorry, but we also have to talk about what he's doing, because we're trying to raise some awareness on the cause that he's doing. So, 7 continents, 7 marathons, 7 swims, 7 base jumps. Nobody's ever done that. He's assembled a team
in 7 days.
In 7 days, to raise awareness and to raise funding for our veterans who are suffering from PTSD and depression and things. And what they're doing is something way cooler. The shit that we love to do. They're trying to set up the Human Performance Project, where they're trying to make sure that when veterans get out, they're not just sent to go see a psychiatrist. We're going to help you sleep better. We're going to help you eat better. We're going to help you exercise. Super cool. And we're about ready to really start promoting this through Atrantil, because Atrantil is going to be a sponsor and help their cause. These guys are doing amazing things. Please watch that episode. What was that, episode 86?
I believe, yes, it's definitely episode 86.
Episode 86. Please check it out. This is one of the most amazing humans you will ever see.
You can go to AmericanExtreme.com. I'll be certain to add it in the notes for both the YouTube as well as the show notes. But AmericanExtreme.com explains everything that they're going to do, why they're going to do what they're going to do. The 7 days, 7 continents, 7 marathons, 7 base jumps challenge. But it's high profile, but it's high profile for a reason. It's simply to help take care of veterans who've just kind of slipped through the cracks, not been addressed. And Ryan Parrott, Birdman Parrott, is really leading the charge with several other special ops people to address this problem.
You know, as long as we're talking about these podcasts, if there's one reason for this podcast is if a couple people get something out of it. When we had Lane Garrett on that talked about sexual trauma,
definitely
several people sent me emails, very lengthy, very personal emails about some trauma that they'd experienced. And it's worth doing that podcast just to help a few people. If we can get a few veterans helped by looking at episode 86, damn, do it. Let's do this. If you're somebody that wants to figure out how to come back from a pepper eating contest and not spend the whole time on the plane and then have TSA arrest you because you can't do that shit anymore. You can't sit in the bathroom the whole time. If we could save one person from spending the whole trip in the bathroom because of the Pocky one chip challenge.
Yeah. It's worth it.
It's worth it.
His last name is not Patton.
I love it.
Dude, I knew.
Birdman, you heard him say it.
I knew when you were just sitting there waiting that I had screwed up. But either way.
That guy's a Navy SEAL sniper. At some point, there's just going to be just a flop.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, Eric said it one too many times.
More. It'll be 2 bullets. Don't worry. Anyhow, that's going to do it for episode number 91. Thank y'all so much for being a part of Gut Check Project. Please like and share, and certainly appreciate everybody who participates. Thanks a lot.
All right. Take care, everybody.